Hi, I'm back. This is my fifth video. It's becoming some kind of a thing. I do 5 videos and I get 5 views. That's nice, right? One view average. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm glad to be able to speak frequently. I began this, I think, on 1st October. I think, yeah, on 1st October. Today is the 15th, is also my dad's birthday, and it's the fifth time that I'm coming out and doing something. The first one was called My Name is Dominic Braganza, and I'm a closet Sedgwick artist. Within a day or two of that, I decided to come out and declare myself a Sedgwick artist officially. So here I am. The name of my YouTube channel is Saint Andrew Daily Missal, because I used to have a blog where I would update the daily missal, which means your daily readings, the actual liturgy of the day. I would update that. I would transcribe it from the Saint Andrew Daily Missal, which I have right here. So every day, in the liturgical life of the church, we have somebody we commemorate. Yeah, it's the day of a saint. So today is the feast of Saint Teresa of Avila. Saint Teresa goes way back. I don't know which century she's from. Oh, here it is. She was born in 1515, so 16th century, not that far back in the history of the church. Some things that stand out for her. A couple of interesting things. One being, before I do that, I think I should read her collect. As I did yesterday for Saint Callistus, Pope and Martyr, I'm going to read the collect. It's when we read the collect that we understand a little bit more about how the church receives a certain saint. So the collect for her goes this way. Graciously hear us, O God, our Saviour, that as we rejoice in the festival of your Holy Virgin Teresa, so we may be fed with the food of her heavenly teaching and grow in loving devotion to you. Why teaching? Women, they say, oh, I do not let a woman speak in the church, you should be silent. St. Paul said that. So you don't expect women to teach. But here we've accepted her to teach on account of her being a doctor of the church. She's an accepted doctor of the church. Doctor comes from the word doctrine, not doctor tinkering around with scalpel and knives and stuff like that, but a doctor of the church who deals in the doctrine, and her doctrine was pure and clearly guided by the Holy Spirit. And so she's a doctor, and so we venerate her and we accept her teaching because it is the teaching of the church. So a couple of things that stand out in her life. One, everybody knows her to be Carmelite, but also she's introduced a concept called the interior castle, where she takes you through rooms, mentally, something like that. I don't know much about it, but we know that she was the contemporary of Saint John of the Cross, and the two of them reformed their order, the order of the Carmelites. They call themselves the Discalced Carmelites. I think they don't wear shoes, sandals, something like that. The other guys continue to wear their sandals, I think, and these guys didn't, so they got, I don't know, discalced. Calced comes from, I think, calluses on the feet. I don't say they have calluses, but that's where the word in Latin comes from, that they didn't wear shoes, or they wore shoes, something of that sort. I think they didn't wear shoes. Quite a lot of conflict there with them breaking away from their order in order to reform it, and then the votes, and then their superior would not allow them to get votes, and it was pretty crazy, right? Of course, Gregory the I think 15th, 18th, Gregory the 13th approved of this new branch of her Carmelite order. So we have papal approval there. While she and John of the Cross were trying to do this, they were persecuted a lot, and that's the conflict that we see even today in this new church. I don't really call it church, but let's call it church because it looks like a church. The new Church of Vatican II and the Church of the Ages, which is the traditional Catholic Church. So we see a lot of conflict where they've got our buildings, they've got our to some extent even they've got our priests, many of whom, the overwhelming majority of whom, won't have a clue that things have been tinkered around so much that their episcopal ordinations of their bishops was invalid, and therefore even their own rights are also invalid. But the bishops are not really bishops who are making them priests. So it's I know it might be shocking to some of you, it was shocking to me, but that was a deal breaker for me when I found out that Pius XII had mandated in I think it was Sacramentum Ordinis, I don't know, one of the encyclicals that he'd written, I think in the 40s, where he codified that every sacrament has matter and form, and he codified the words that were essential for validity. I think that's the material part of the sacrament or the form. I don't know, but I'm new at this. But he codified it and he said this part of the preface is not to be messed with. You can't alter it. If you alter it, then you have rendered the sacrament invalid. So I'm not making any of this up. This is really shocking to me too. Uh, what I'm saying is this conflict that existed in their time is also there in abundance in our time. And how did they do it? They didn't do it with pride, like so many of us are so wanted to do, myself included, myself especially. I know who I am. I'm a proud man. So we must counter this with humility because Our Lady is never going to help us if we're proud. God doesn't assist the proud, rather he reduces them, he brings them down to low places, and he elevates the humble. So let's do that. But let's also clarify certain things. When we talk about this particular saint, we see a few things. One is that she's the only woman who has ever started an order for males. That's a very unique thing, right? So if you want to talk about feminism or women's representation in the church today, you have all the false hierarchy talking about women need a greater role. Well, hello, it's been there, it's around for a long time. Women have had a very prominent role. Look at Our Lady, look at the nuns who are praying in their cloisters. You think they're not prominent in the church? They are. They're very prominent. We know they're praying for us. Okay, so don't start this unnecessary tomfoolery with the church to say, oh, women need a more prominent role. They have a very prominent role. They have their place. Okay, God has apportioned to them their place, and we have a doctor of the church to prove it. Right, we have 7, I think, not just her. There are quite a few, but she was the first. So that's another distinction for her. She was the first doctor, female doctor of the church, I think. Yeah. So there are quite a few. But one thing that struck me when I was reading her biography today, it was not in the missal. I found this somewhere else. Very interestingly, she found it hard to overcome the world. She would say, whenever she heard somebody say words of praise to her, men used to quote her and all of that. Whenever she would hear men say, words of praise to her or anyone, she would instantly almost, swoon. She would feel, she'd go into, recounting those words that were said to her. But she overcame that by the grace of God because she had a calling, right? We all have a calling. And that brings me to Saint Teresa of Calcutta and other saints, which are Novus Ordo saints. Novus Ordo means new order. So Novus Ordo Missae, that's the new mass. It has, it represents a lot of changes in the church. So sometimes we call that the Novus Ordo. And then there's, the church. So the Novus Ordo has canonized. Canon just means to accept as official. They've accepted as official saints quite bogus people actually, because they may have even been holy people. You never know. Some of them have been outright pagans, you can say, like Escriva, Jose Maria Escriva. He's a Jew. He never converted. Paid money, in fact, and they made him a saint. So we have all of these irregularities, and where do they come from? The church cannot change, substantially, cannot change the rules, cannot alter tradition, right? But they went and altered the tradition of canonizing saints. They removed the need for 3 miracles, or they reduced it from 3 to 1, something like that. They removed the Diabolus Advocatus, I think that's what it's called, the devil's advocate, where there was an official position in, a person who would lay the possible case for why that person shouldn't be canonized. They would go into the history of the church, they would interview a lot of people. Sorry, they'd go into the history of that profile, they would interview a lot of people, and, all of that. And eventually then, it would emerge. So there was a cultus, which is the cult of the saint. There would be, a lot of things which are wholly missing today. We've got Saint Paul. I call him saint because they call him saint. Paul VI, who was Montini, the archbishop expelled by Pius XII, who later became a cardinal, and then he was, elected as pope. They made him a saint. What did he ever do? There was his cultus. Who was praying to him? We don't have those answers. There's no case for these saints. So today we have Carlos Acutis, I think that's his name, or Carlos Magnus, I don't know, Magnus Carlsen, whatever his name is. Another guy who's just embraced the world. So we have Teresa of Avila on one side, who's rejected the world and gone after Christ and only him by clinging to her cross. And then we have all these Novus Ordo saints who've embraced the world. Teresa of Calcutta embraced the world too. Doesn't look like it, but she didn't, which is why they canonized her. Because she almost deified men. Don't hit me with that statement. Look at it closely. She would, of course, some of the things she said are fine. She would say that, when I look at a person or leper, I don't see a leper, I see Christ, which is perfectly biblical. But whether or not she was holy, I'm not saying she wasn't, but whether or not she was holy, they needed a symbol like her to, then officially deify men, as the Vatican has want to do for the last 60 years or so. They want to deify men and make this a religion of men, which is why they also turned the tables around and did so many crazy things. Language in the vernacular, mass in the vernacular. None of these were strange to me a few months ago. Now it's all like, what's gone on? And also Carlos Acutis, embracing the world, wearing his Nike sneakers. Nothing wrong with Nike sneakers, but look at what they're doing. They're trying to take somebody who has maybe some saintliness, and then make them a saint officially, without any cultus, without any miracles, without anything. In fact, his body is not incorrupt as they claim. Doesn't have to be incorrupt, but they claim he's incorrupt. Then his mom says no, he's corrupt. His friends beautified his body. So much of deception, because they want to lead us to a point where men are deified, and we can look at men as key to salvation. No more different than the guys who make Marvel. Oh, heroes are going to save the day. No, it's we can't move God from his position, and the only way saints are saints is when they have scrubbed themselves so clean spiritually that it's only sanctifying grace that shines through, and that's when you're a saint, whether they canonize you or not. So we need to move past all these these false saints, so many of them. Teresa of Calcutta, when the cardinal went to give her last rites, he recoiled at the sight of her and he said, "This woman needs an exorcism." That's what he said, right? So that's not me, that's the cardinal from Bombay saying that. So we need to look closely at the saints. We've taken a lot of things for granted. I mean, you guys probably didn't know, I didn't know, that Paul VI was a saint. He's a devil. You never give that guy, you wouldn't consider him Catholic, but they made him a saint. And I'm like, when did they do that? But they did, right? So we need to look a little closely at some of these bizarre situations that have been brought about in the Nova Scotia Church, which they've imposed on us and want us to accept as Catholic, but they're not. So we need to educate ourselves first, and then maybe prepare for some kind of pushback, some kind of drawing a line in the sand, or just clearing away the debris and saying, okay, you guys do what you want there. You can keep the church, okay, the building is going to come back to us eventually, but we're going to practice our faith. I do this myself. It's not easy with family not believing what we are doing, but I've made a decision after I had a big huge confrontation with a relative of mine, a former spiritual director also, and this was many months ago. This would have been in February or March this year. Yeah, it shook me because I was like, man, this guy defends Vatican II, and I'm just getting to know what Vatican II, what he studied it, and he defends it, and he calls himself a traditional Catholic. What's going on? Like, why is this guy not alarmed? And then I said I shouldn't have said those things. I shouldn't have said that. I know certain things. And it's his faith, it's his religion. Let him keep it. I'm not going to impose on him, and I will ask him not to impose on me. This is my faith. Not that my experience is determining anything. That's the modernist way of expressing religion. But I'm standing for tradition. I didn't know it at the time, but that's the journey I was on. So if I am standing behind tradition, that's the bulwark of the faith, not the community, as many people say, charismatics especially, as I was brought up to believe. So I'm in a fine place. I'm rooted in tradition. Nothing can shake me. I know, it's easy to say that, but when I have tradition, that's not me speaking. So I'm in a good place. So let's cling to the real saints. There are plenty of them here. Tomorrow is the feast of Saint Hedwig. I hope I do something for Saint Hedwig tomorrow. Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque, I've heard of her. She's coming up. She's a holy woman, isn't she? She's a virgin. Okay. We've got Saint Luke the Evangelist coming up on the 18th. That's October 18th. That's next week. So some pretty awesome. Yeah, he's got Vespers. I think is he a double of the second class? Okay. We got some interesting saints here. So we're loaded. We're loaded, and we don't know any of these saints. I mean, I didn't. I knew a few, maybe 8 or 10 saints in total, and I didn't know much more about them than before I began this journey. And now every day I get to know about a saint, a real saint, a doctor or a confessor or a martyr or a pope or a holy woman or a virgin. There are certain categories. Now the Vatican's come out with offering of life category. What the hell is that, man? Offering of life. You just had to make a new category because you're running out of saints. Because you haven't been giving sacraments to people for donkey's years. You haven't been ordaining priests. You haven't been consecrating bishops. Man, it's so frustrating. But we're going to overcome this with the power of the Rosary. The Rosary, yeah. We enthrone the Holy Trinity. Every time we say a single Hail Mary, it's, when we say 3 of them, that's enthroning the Trinity. So there's a lot that we can do with the Holy Rosary, and we are going to stamp out this heresy, cesspool of all heresies, that is modernism. Thank you for listening. I thought it was going to be short, but I'm glad it's over. I'll see you soon.